Gridiron Warrior Podcast is built for strength and football coaches who want to run the best possible programs for their athletes and their communities. Each episode delivers simple, practical coaching advice that transfers straight from the weight room to the field. No theory, no fluff, no fancy words, just real world strategies from coaches that are living it. So you can build stronger, faster, more durable athletes at any level. From the beginning, I've committed to only bringing on sponsors that I myself use and would confidently recommend to any coach. And that's why I'm fired up to partner with TrainHeroic. TrainHeroic is the platform I use to write programs, run my own training, and deliver workouts to athletes and whole teams. It's clean, it's coach friendly, and your athletes are actually going to go in the app and use it and enjoy it, compared to some of the other ones that are out there. If you're a strength coach looking for a better way to program and get that information to your athletes, or if you're a coach and you just want, plug and play, ready to go training programs that you don't have to build, TrainHeroic is it. Okay. And here's the kicker for anyone that is a supporter of the Gridiron Warrior. Start a free 90-day trial of TrainHeroic using the link, trainheroic.com/Gridiron Warrior. And I'll drop 2 12-week training programs right into your account so that you don't have to start from scratch. You can start with 2 12-week programs built in there, tweak them, change them, customize them, and get a good feel of using the app. And those will be in there for you so you can use those. So head to www.trainheroic.com/Gridiron Warrior, start your 90-day free trial, and reply to your welcome email saying that you want those 2 12-week training programs from me, and I'll make sure you get those. If you're a high school coach trying to bring structure and feedback to your jump and speed training, you need to check out Plyomat. The switch mat technology is precise, durable, and it's far more reliable than those laser-based systems. More importantly, the feedback is instant. Your jump height, your contact time, RSI, all shown on the remote, the controller, and it's logged in their app as well. You can use it every single day as a checkpoint. Are your athletes hitting plyo numbers or thresholds? We use it in season to gauge readiness. You can check their ground reaction force and see if their springs are there as well. It's something that you'll bring out and use every single day in the weight room. If you follow Rich Burnett, the founder, you already know that the education piece is big too. He's a high school guy at heart, and so is the company. So, Plyomat is there to provide everything that we talk about in Gridiron Warrior, actionable results, real service, great customer service, and they're trying to bring jump training to the next level. So happy to support them. Check out the Plyomat. Today on the podcast, I have Coach John Marshall from Randolph High School in Massachusetts, multiple-time state champions. He is the head football coach. He's the athletic director. When he took over that program, I think he said 17. He had 17 kids on the roster. He's turned that thing into a powerhouse in Massachusetts. And he's a Gridiron Warrior guy. So we talk about contact prep, talk about scores and stops, talk about the Summer Summit on July 18th because he's going to be there. He's a conference junkie. He loves that stuff. That's how we met. But he talks about how important the weight room and strength and conditioning is to his program. He's got his own version of the 1,000-pound club that he uses, and he can tell whether or not he's going to have a championship team based on what they're doing in the weight room. So this was a great episode. I hope you guys enjoy. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Gridiron Warrior. Today on the podcast, I have Coach John Marshall from Randolph. Coach, take it away. Tell us who you are. Talk about your roles because you're wearing a couple different hats over there. And if you want to give us a little background for my non-New England people about Randolph and where you were at, with football wise and things like that. The floor is yours. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach. Awesome to be here. Really, really excited about it. So my name is John Marshall. I'm the head football coach and athletic director at Randolph High School. We're a public high school just a little outside of Boston. We are an urban school that is surrounded by suburban schools. We are in Division 8 here. So that's the smallest division for football up here. So we're talking about a smaller team that usually carries a roster of only like 42 guys per season. I've seen the numbers go anywhere from like 50 guys. And when I took over the program during COVID, we only had 17 guys playing football in the entire town. There was no Pop Warner program when I first took over this program. So we had 17 guys and we built it up over the years. We've been in 3 state title games in the past 5 years. We've won 2 of them. We're a perennial playoff team. We've sent about 12 guys to go play at the NCAA level over the past few years, all different levels. We got guys in D3, D2, got 2 guys up at D1 right now. So we certainly have some talented athletes here. But, we're in a town that, doesn't have a lot of youth sports. So we have to really focus on developing our players from a holistic mindset in everything they do. And part of that is our culture and our weight room. And that has led to our success here.
I love it. I love it. I'm blessed here. Obviously, D1, we've got great facilities. We've got the kids are going to show up no matter what. It makes my job easy. But I get fired up hearing from coaches like you that are at small schools, that are at small towns, places like that, and you're keeping football going, and you're making it a thing. It's something that I grew up, and I loved playing high school football here in Rhode Island, but Rhode Island's a small state and small football, and it's coaches like you that are making it fun, and you're making a difference. So the question I ask everyone that comes on the podcast, what is it specifically? Because it is a lot of long hours, right? Especially, you didn't even mention it, but being the athletic director as well, right? There's a lot of long hours to go into it. There's a lot of commitment to it. You're not making, Nick Saban money at Randolph. I mean, maybe you are, I don't know. But
Nope, not even close.
I would guess not, right? So what is it that you love about football? What is it that you love about that environment that keeps you coming back to work every day?
Yeah, I've always loved coaching. I started coaching right after I got out of the military. I was a Marine for 6 years. And, just that ability to give back was, kind of what I was looking for. I had really positive, influential coaches when I was in high school, and, they made a positive impact on me and helped guide me. That idea of doing that for the next generation, but also using athletics to complement what goes on in the classroom, right? We have this job as a teacher coach to prepare these young people for their next phase of their life, whether it's me as the coach or the athletic director. And, I just think with athletics, it lends itself to those real life conversations that can impact a student athlete far beyond any lesson or practice drill, whatever it is. Whether it's learning about commitment and, what that means and how you honor that, or what does it mean to self-sacrifice, and those constant lessons that come up in both roles that I have are what drive me, because that's where I think we make a difference and can positively impact these student athletes that we're in charge of.
And, I can officially say I'm starting to get old now when I have kids that I used to coach that reach back out to me and talk to me and say, hey, I'm getting ready to have a kid myself, or, I'm getting married, I'm getting into this job now that I'm done with my career. And I didn't realize how structured I needed to be and how disciplined I needed to be. And if I didn't have that structured routine that you taught me in the weight room, or, we built over my 4 or 5 years here in college, I wouldn't be as successful as I am today. So it's awesome. It's one of those, it's the last frontier. If kids aren't playing sports, where are they getting these lessons from? And sometimes I wonder, what are you doing if you're not active in a team too? I talk about that a lot, though. This is the last chance to really be a part of a team. I love my coworkers. I love, they're great, but there's something different than being on a football team. You hinted at this. Let's talk about the weight room and its importance and where that fits in your philosophy as a coach, and how that's kind of a backbone of your program there. And then tell us about, what do you have for resources in terms of weight room?
Yeah. So we always talk about that. The weight room is where we build our championships. I believe that championships are built in the off season, and we are really, really big on being a multi-sport athlete and being well conditioned and well trained. We incentivize our guys through an off-season point program to go do other sports first and foremost, and then be in the weight room. And that, I think, is what has separated us. And it's great. We actually have data now. I'll be going into year 7 or 8 here. We know however many kids test out into our version of the 1,000-pound club, our success for the season. So in years where we have 12 or more guys in the 1,000-pound club, we know we're a playoff team. If that number pushes to 15 or more, we know we're a Final Four team. If it's 17 or more, we know we're a Super Bowl team. So we literally, because we can track how many guys are in our 1,000-pound club into the correlation of the season. And not because it's just the weight you push and the success on the field, but what does it mean to attain that, right? That is discipline. That's character. That's all these things that we want to instill into these young people, right? You can't just lock yourself into doing the 1,000-pound club. You can't just show up and do that, right? It reveals who you are. And that means, for us, we do 6 a.m. workouts in the school year. So our guys come in the winter and the spring, hit the weight room at 6 a.m. and then go do their winter or spring sport. It was really awesome for me. We had a track meet the other day. My entire offensive line is throwing shot put together. They're all out there, right? And that's what we want. We want that multi-sport athlete, right? And, but they're also in the weight room at 6 a.m., right? So, that encompasses, our team mantra, which is winners do more, right? If you want to be successful, you got to figure out a way to do more than your opponent, the person you're interviewing against someday for a job, whatever it is, you have to do more. You can't just expect $1 million dream with a minimum wage work ethic.
I love it. And have you had any pushback with the multi-sport kids or things like that? Do you modify the program a little bit for them?
Yeah. We make it, I think it's important. Anytime you put a goal in front of a young person is you never want to have them make a choice, right? I am a failure as a coach. And this is for any coach listening right now. If you're making that kid make a choice between being a football player and a basketball player, a basketball player and a baseball player, a football player and a track kid, if you're asking them to pick one or another, that's selfish on your end, right? They should be able to do both, especially in high school, right? Especially in high school. So you have to work, and oftentimes there's a communication between the coaching staffs, to make it attainable for them. Every goal we talk in this world like SMART goals, right? If you have a SMART goal, the A is attainable, right? Is it attainable? So the modification we do is, we expect those guys to be in the weight room 2 to 3 days a week, right? And, the coaches that I put in charge of that know who is the multi-sport kid, and if they have a meet the next day, what does that look like versus if they're just coming off of a track meet or a basketball game. So we augment those workouts around it. And that's where, having a knowledgeable coaching staff is important, and that understanding that holistic approach to these kids.
Now, if you don't want to give up the secret sauce to your success, I don't blame you. You don't. But your 1,000-pound club, you said it's not a true, squat, bench, clean, or whatever it is. What is your 1,000-pound club? What is your criteria?
Yeah. So again, going back to the attainable thing. So we do 4 lifts instead of 3. So we do squat, bench, hex bar, deadlift, and clean, right? So power clean. And I think making that 1,000 pounds, one, it makes it attainable for a high school player. And it also, lends itself a little bit more to getting away to probably that era that, I grew up in. Maybe you did too, Scott, of like, just focusing on big, heavy lifts, because that's not always what it's about in strength and conditioning, right? Yes, it's impressive if a kid can squat 405 in high school, right? But what's his mobility look like? So adding that 4th lift of the power clean makes it attainable. And also, if I only had to pick one weight room lift to do, I would do the power clean. I think it's the most holistic approach to a total body. It's relatable to what happens on the field, so, and that's helped us out a lot too. So that's kind of our metric for that. And then we test on other things. We do, their fly 10 on a laser time. We do the 40s. We do all that stuff. We also do a plyometric test where we put boxes at a 40-inch height for linemen and 48 for skills. And can you just, straight up jump onto that box and stick the landing? So we add all these little metrics. And probably the most fun metric we also do is your freshman weight on the bench. How many times can you bench it? And we do that because we want kids to see that growth between their freshman and senior year. It's like, man, when I walked in, I couldn't physically move myself on the bench, but now I'm a senior and there's, say just 135, but I can bench that 25 times now, no problem. Right. And it's a good metric because what you really want to do, it's not so much on the weights, it's the growth. You want to show these kids that what they're investing in is having a result. And that I think is a huge mark. And why kids love being in the weight room. They talk about all the time. Oh, I just PR'd in this, I PR'd in that. But giving those different metrics and making them attainable really incentivizes our guys in a positive way.
I love it. And little different here at the college level, especially in the past couple of years with not NIL, but the transfer portal. I don't have kids here. I do still have kids that have been here 4 or 5 years, but there's less and less of that now. So we have our standards and we have our certain numbers that come in. And do I get a kid that can squat 315 and by the time he leaves, he's 405, 450? I still have some of those kids, but sometimes I get a junior that comes in, he's already a 405 squatter. And it's like, okay, what other metrics do we need to move to get you to be a better player? So we really emphasize the speed work and, jumps and measuring our jumps. We got to get you a plyomat. That's what we got to do. We'll send you over one. so you can record those as well. But emphasis on those, and just, our squat numbers, our bench numbers, those are going to get better. The number one thing is consistency. I tell our kids, if you just keep coming in and you keep doing these lifts, you're going to get better. The biggest thing I've done in the past year now is I have all of our numbers from 2021 when I took over as the head guy. And I can go back and I can pull a kid's name up on the roster if he's been here 4 or 5 years and say, hey, look at where you started. I have your testing numbers from 2021. This is what you started. And, so that's been pretty cool too. So we have our standards. We know what numbers we want to hit. I can tell a coach, I can say, this kid is a elite in these 5 categories. We got to do everything we can physically. If he's playing on the field and he's hitting all these numbers, we got to make sure we keep this kid, because he shouldn't be here, And if the kid is hitting all those numbers and they're playing, then it's a conversation of like, what are we doing on the field? What is your next, how do you become a better football player? So it's allowed us to get away from just chasing lifting numbers and get into more of, again, the holistic development. What do you need to do to become a better football player? So that's awesome.
I think your job as a leader is like clarity, right? I always say leaders create clarity. That's a Jocko thing, right? It's like, you got to create clarity. And if kids, like, hey, we just don't want to be in the weight room. Like, why are we in the weight room? Especially kids these days, they want to know the why, right? So why are we in there, and what should it look like, and why are we doing this? And if you can put clarity to that and how it helps, and same thing, like, we have our numbers back to 2021, we can show the kids like, okay, here's where you started, here's where you are, and they can see the on-field success. That really has helped boost our culture. And it's to the point now, like, we are chasing kids out of our weight room. Like, I'm like, guys, I gotta go home, I gotta lock, like, let's go.
Those are always good problems to have. You've been on the Gridiron Warrior. You've been, a participant of the program. You've checked out all the courses and all that. What things have you taken away from those that you've blended into your program now? Because you were building a successful program before that, but you said, you know what, I got to go out and find more. I got to continue to find ways to get better. And you folded some of these things into what you currently do. So what are the big things that you've added that you love, that you've added to your program?
Yeah, I think it's important wherever you are as a coach to always understand, like, there's more to learn, right? Like, we all have areas of growth. We talk about these kids and they're growing in the weight room. Well, are you growing as a coach in your knowledge base? And what I knew from strength and conditioning when I got my CSCS like 20 years ago, sometimes doesn't apply, and it's updated. And so that's what I appreciated most about the Gridiron Warrior assets, is like ability to refine what we're already doing and incorporate it. And I think the natural implementation was the combat prep course. We go flex, for our off-season conditioning. We start with flex, and then, we do some quick just plyo work. And then the kids transition to the weight room, and we start with the combat conditioning stuff. And that slowly progresses from the start of June all the way to August. And then we keep it going into the season. So that contact prep is just worth every single penny, because we've seen a marked increase in our ability to tackle. And, to the point where other coaches have come and asked to like practice with us, they're like, your team just tackles so well. How do you teach that? And I'm like, sure. And the first question I'd go is, what's your weight room like? Because you physically have to be able to bring another human being down, right? That's one thing. But, we talk about a lot of those drills, and they're just implemented really well into our weight room routine of like getting the guys warmed up, getting in there, doing some quick core and plyo work, and then right into the contact prep, and then into our main lifts and our auxiliary lifts right there. And that implementation was seamless. And, just having that menu of resources that we kind of pick and choose from was just worth every single penny.
I love it. And the great thing about the program is if you don't have anything, right, you can plug that entire thing in from start to finish and you're good to go. But if you're a coach like yourself, you've already got a good program, you can find the pieces that are going to elevate your program. You don't need to take the entire thing, but 5-6 drills out of there, and sequencing matters and things like that. But you can find the things that are going to move the needle. I've heard a lot of coaches as well, especially with summer programs, is in the past, there might've been issues with retention and getting them to show up in the summer, getting them to come in and do your summer training stuff. You start incorporating, some scores and stops types of drills and make summer work fun. And people have this misnomer about fun. Hard work is still fun, but again, it also makes you a better football player. So have you taken some of that scores and stop stuff as well?
Yeah, and that's where it is. We try to do on Thursdays of our program anything competitive, right? We do competition Thursdays, right? So we've gone through like a work week. We give the guys Friday off, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. So Thursday we bring that in, and I just think of we do those like plank pushes, those partner stuff, and that's we start with that, and we progress from there. And if you can keep it competitive, the guys come back, right? Because they want, right? And we even, we track out during the season, the off season. It's like we have them in teams who won that drill, who won it, and at the end of the off season program, they get a little incentive. And like they might get to go first to lunch that day or something like that. If they had the best, off season, like if they have that wins and losses throughout the competitive drills that we do. But I think really the important thing, Scott, is like, if you're a new head coach or new to a program, being okay with giving up a little control, right? And like having a full out resource is okay. Like this is where I fall as being an athletic director and head football coaches. I wear so many hats. I am, a strength and conditioning coach, as well as an athletic administrator, as well as, sometimes a first aid person, as well as register, as well as the accountant for the athletic department. Like, I do everything, right? And so having that set program, just like, yep, this is it. I can look at it. And usually like football guys, we all love being in the weight room. We're like, oh, I know how to lift and things like that. But like having that maybe humbleness, right? Like a little humility to be like, I'm going to go to an expert and just have this ready-made program. So I can use my mental energy and capacity elsewhere. That is worth everything. That's worth everything. And when it's 6 a.m. and you're rolling in the middle of the summer, you don't want to have to think like, oh, what was that auxiliary lift we should complement with our deadlift today? Like, no, it's all there. It's set. Forget.
And I think when you can combine multiple things in your program, kill two birds with one stone. And, in the summer, kids, they want to go do other things. They want to go to a job or whatever it is. And so you're like, I can't do a lift for an hour, 45 minutes of conditioning, and then I want to do 7-on-7, or I want to do field work, and you just don't have the hours in the day. So now if you have a way to successfully blend, your contact prep into your lift, your scores and stop stuff into your speed work, now you're killing two birds with one stone. You're getting better at football, and you're not keeping them there for 2-3 hours. And when you do that, the kids want to come back the next day because it's not a drag. It's not a huge time chunk out of their day. So I think that's another sneaky benefit of the program. So just talking about that.
Yeah. So
multiple birds with one stone there.
Yeah. And that's it. We all, the only finite resource we have is time, right? Like that's it. Like just time is the only thing that you can never get back. You can get money back. You can get anything else back. Right. But is that time? So, when you're looking at, okay, this young person is giving me 2 hours of their time voluntarily, right? Like for us in, high school, everything's voluntary, right? Like if they don't show up for a workout, that's it. That's it. That's voluntary, right? It's not until we're in season can these things become mandatory. So being respectful of their time, and then also the coach's time, right? We talk about, high school coaches aren't exactly paid a lot up here in Massachusetts. It's not a full-time job for me being the head football coach. I'm the full-time athletic director. So being mindful of kids' time and what they can do, and then equating that to a result, that gets you the buy-in, so when we do like our start and stop stuff, I think those players immediately gravitate towards, okay, this is worthwhile. I can see how this translates onto the field.
Again, it's one of those things where it's a systematic. If you get consistency and you're building a program that kids want to come back to, and then you can do more with them when they're there, and then they're getting better at their sport. They get better at their sport. They're more likely to stick with it and trust the process. And it's a snowball effect from there. It takes time, no doubt. But once that thing gets rolling, you're going to be in a great spot.
Yeah.
We talked about this. We talked about this coming up this summer because we've connected a couple of times at clinics and things like that. But we're hosting the Gridiron Warrior Summer Summit here. And I'm trying to kind of change the game in terms of, we've all been to those conferences where you sit down in the chair, you're staring at the screen, you're taking notes. And, half the time it's about philosophy of, let's run this offense or this defense, but you know what you want to run, so you're not going to those and you're going to change your mind. You're not going to watch, for me, I'm Springfield guy, triple option coach is not going to go watch a spread presentation and then decide to throw the play. So, half the time those presentations don't really matter. Again, tied in with the Gridiron Warrior theme is how do we make a difference? So I'm bringing in people to do all hands-on stuff. And for the high school coaches out there, it's going to be half strength and conditioning, half football. I'm doing a talk on neck training. We've got Jack Dustin from Endicott Division III. He's going to talk about warm-ups, whether it's, in the weight room or it's pre-practice. How do you get the most out of your warm-up time? Because I think some coaches out there just have this warm-up they've been doing for 10 years of pre-practice. We go static stretch into dynamic, and then we go to, and there's more we can do now. So let's bring in an expert to show us that and talk through that. How do you organize that? How do you do that? Jim Carizzi is going to talk about some lateral movement stuff. He's going to talk about stuff he does as a strength coach pre-practice or at the start of practice to get kids, high intensity, get their heart rate up and get them going. That's going to be awesome. And then on the football side, we're bringing in some really good speakers to talk about special teams, talk about punt blocks, specifically, how do you get that? How do you achieve that goal? Talk about tackling. And then obviously the keynote speaker is going to be Dante Scarnecchia talking about offensive line and whatever he wants to talk about. And the other part of this clinic was I sat there and said, I love, seeing Dante up on the whiteboard, talking about schemes and talking about this and that. But man, would I love to just go to practice and watch him coach guys up and get corrections and get technique taught. So I know you're fired up for it in terms of coaches. What are you, most excited to learn about and get better and be a part of the Summer Summit? So what are your thoughts on that in terms of coming to that, and what excites you the most?
Yeah, I think just seeing how different people practice is, sometimes we get, especially if you've been in the same school for a long period of time, just seeing how people practice and how they prepare, that can get, because we are, like you said, we can get to be creatures of routine, right? And that can be really killer to a program. And a rule I've always had in my head is if I'm bored, the kids are bored, right? And that all the way back from my days being counselor, right? If I'm bored, the kids are bored. So just seeing how they teach and progress drills, you want to know, especially a warm-up, right? And I've seen so many variations of how do you approach flex and what should that look like? And, from teams that say, well, flex is on your own. That's something we have starting practice at 4:00 and you got to be ready, to a team that can take 20 minutes, to get going. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I've been on a team like that where I'm like, are we do some football at some point? We have a 2-hour practice. Let's go. So, just approaching how do you start, right? How do you start a practice? And then what are the nuances of how people teach? That's what I always find interesting. One of my things is no lines, no lectures. I don't want coaches lecturing on the field, right? I think you teach in pre-prac or in a classroom, but on the field, you have that time. You only have 2 hours or whatever that is allocated. So you're going to work on the field. And how can you limit, that lecturing on the field so guys can just be working? Because the reality is, especially high school, you only work with the kids that you have or the town that live in the town or, the town gives to you. So, how are you developing them? And, everyone has a place to go. And if I'm doing the same practice plan I was 6 years ago, to a T, we got to update, right? So we got to think of a new way to get it because the game is constantly progressing. And I say that wholeheartedly, even as a guy who's a double wing coach. We are, old school, 7 guys in the line of scrimmage, double wing, and it works for us. 2 years ago, we scored the most points in the state of Massachusetts out of all divisions, right? Divisions 1 through 8. That works for us. But I do want to know what, other coaches are saying and doing, even if they are a spread RPO coach, because we might have to defend them, and what is that philosophy there? And so even if it doesn't match what it is, I'm a football nerd. That's how we met, is at clinics. I have no problem listening to 9 hours straight of football. And I love it, man. The lineup is great. It's always good to hear from Dante. He's awesome, but I'm really looking forward to seeing some of that hands-on application off of the whiteboard.
I think schematics is something that as a coach, you're always able to control, right? You can decide the scheme. If you're a double wing, there are different ways that you're going to attack a defense. It changes from week to week. You're 100% in control of that. But the difference comes down to, can you coach the details, right? Can you get in there and can you make the changes, make the wrinkles? If we got to work a double team and that's a big piece of the puzzle this week, are we doing something about it? And how do we coach that up? How do we get a little bit better at those things? And that's the difference is if you come to this conference and you can pick up 1 or 2 things like that, if you can block an extra punt or two, right? That changes.
yeah.
Again, we talked about it before. That's a 14-point swing, right? Because they didn't
Yeah.
score, you scored as well. So that's a 14-point swing. If you can find a way to block one punt a game, right, you're a dangerous team. And then the other team has so many trickle down effects to that. So trying to get all.
And we our first Super Bowl in 2021, we won off of a block punt.
No way.
Yeah, we blocked the punt. We blocked one punt, and then we had blocked the punt, and then created pressure on a second punt where their own player blocked their punt because he was the guy who gave up the punt, first punt block. So he backed up. He broke, we call it the cardinal rule. If you run a shield punt, the cardinal rule is you never back up, right? And that's what happened. That was the score. That was the difference in our first state title ever in school history. And, special teams for us is a massive part of what we do. Yeah, rep wise, it's not a third of the game. People always say, oh, it's a third of the game, but it is consistently the plays that cover the most amount of field, right? So if I said, and this is why I love block punts, since I started as a special teams coordinator, like, those plays go for 60 yards. If you told a defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator, you're going to run a play and it's going to cover 60 yards, they'd be like, oh my God, we got to develop a whole period to this, So that happens for us here. And it's literally been the difference. We, on the road to that Super Bowl, we also scored on 2 kickoff returns, and those were the only scores in the game. So specials is love it. Yeah, love it.
It's going to be a great day. Obviously in Rhode Island, right here at Rhodey's, we'll be in the varsity weight room, which is going to be, an experience for the smaller coaches out there, smaller schools. You get to see what it looks like in a big time weight room and how we do that. But I mean, the selling point I always tell people is that if you're having a hard time locking in the date, just tell the whole family to come, right? They can go to the beach for the day. Rhode Island Beach, you can't beat it. You're coming in. You're going to be a football junkie. You're going to be around a bunch of other football junkies talking ball the entire day. It's going to be awesome. Coach, this has been great.
And clam cake sold.
Yeah, dude. Maybe you know what? Maybe I'll some clam cakes. Maybe I'll get that catered. Everyone can have some clam cakes at lunch. I don't know if we should do clam cakes at lunchtime. The afternoon might be a little tough.
Yeah, it would be sluggish. Yeah.
But Coach, this was great. If people want to follow along, right? They want to root for you this season. They want to stay. How can we watch Randolph? How can we stay in touch?
Yeah, we're pretty active on Instagram, Twitter. We live stream our games. So just look up RHS Blue Devil Football. That's, we norm our Instagram and Twitter. You can follow us along there. We're looking pretty good. We just had an historic season, being undefeated state champion. But we're bringing back 7 starters on offense and defense. So a core is back, especially big boys up front. We're bringing almost our entire line back from last year. So, we're hoping for a successful program. But that is dependent on the kids and doing the work and getting them incentivized to do it. And it's in their hands. And our job as coaches is to create that structure. And that's what we like about, Gridiron Warriors. It's structured, right? It is structured. And now with the history of it and the history of our success, the kids know what they're going to get in. And, we just met with like our rising 8th grade class. And, there's 18 kids in there. The first question they asked is, when do we get in the weight room? There's 8th graders, right? Like they're like, they literally just asked that to one of my captains about an hour before we started here. And I was like, oh, we're going to be good. Like, in fact, and I'm like, we're going to be great. If that's the question you didn't ask, when the offense, defense, he goes, when do we get in the weight room? So it's even trickling down to our lower levels.
Awesome. We love that. We love hearing that. Coach, this has been great. I appreciate this so much. Looking forward to seeing you in July. Again, thanks for coming on the Gridiron Warrior Podcast. Any double wing coaches out there got questions, I'll tell them to hit you up.
Definitely.
Thanks again, Coach. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks to you guys for listening to this episode of the Gridiron Warrior Podcast. We will catch you on the next. If you enjoyed this podcast and you want to keep getting better, I encourage you to check out my new community, the Gridiron Warrior Insiders. Got it right here on the phone. The app is clutch. There's so many things in there that I think you'll find valuable. We have the weekly film study where you can go live with me, ask any questions you want. There's no Q&A, no big deal. I always have a topic that we're going to hit on every single week, and we record those too if you can't make it. With the Wildcat webinar, that's where I call somebody else in to run the offense, and they come in and they bring a presentation about something that they're an expert in and give us some fresh insight, new information. I have unreleased podcasts. There's about 10 or 15 that haven't gone live yet. You can listen to them early before anyone else. We have the equipment room, so discounts, whether it's TrainHeroic, Plyomat, OVR, or even my own courses. You have discounts in the equipment room. Okay, the free safety, anything that I want to throw in there, bonus programs for yourself as a coach, you name it, it's in there. And we have over 50 coaches right now that are helping each other. So we post questions and coaches will work together and provide insight and share information because that's what it's all about is coaches getting better. So if you want to check that out, the links are in my bio, the links at the end of this podcast. Check it out there, Gridiron Warrior Insiders.